Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching today's in-depth ag forecast brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions. We start off with the low-level wind field this afternoon here on Monday, and a couple of very just striking features about this. First of all, look at the trade winds coming through the Caribbean and eventually coming into the Gulf of Mexico. These stronger trade winds were a part of a big shift in the MJO that we saw that kind of excited the trade winds around the world, especially into the Atlantic. And it carried quite a bit of dust, Saharan dust, all the way into the southeast. But what it brought right in through here was quite interesting. We saw the development of a tropical, well, kind of hard to call it a tropical system, but there was a disturbance, a tropical low, if you will, that came out of the Gulf of Mexico and today moved through parts of the southeast where it's currently sitting here almost going over the Appalachian Mountains. I'm going to show you that again in just a few seconds, but also notice right here along the front range of the Rockies where we are currently kind of pulling in more moisture, and this is helping to fuel some of the big storms that are blowing up here in parts of the southern and western plains, really getting into parts of Texas. We're going to keep an eye on this area this week as another system will come out and go right through parts of the Midwest. So those are all the kind of moving pieces in the near term. But what was neat to watch was on radar. Let me take you back to this morning, or literally the overnight hours, and we're just keeping an eye right here on this very tight little circulation. Now, the wind field was not strong around this. The rains were quite heavy, but as it came on shore and went through parts of Alabama, Georgia, spreading quite a bit of precipitation, and now late this afternoon, as it's moving through the Appalachian Mountains, we're keeping a close eye on this area for strong to severe storms. So it's here in the southeast and also over in parts of Texas. Now, just thinking about that, through 4 o'clock this afternoon, some of those storms that were associated with that tropical impulse did bring in well over 1 inch to 2 inches of rainfall and locally some heavier amounts. And what you're looking at here is the last 72 hours worth of precipitation. So you had the big weekend front that came sweeping through. That's the one that initiated the severe supercell that made the tornado in Gaylord. Michigan ranked EF3, and then all the severe wind reports that we did see over the weekend here, plus the cold air that came in behind it producing the snow. Now, if you kind of saw some of the news reports, it was 6 to 18 inches of snow that was kind of centered here in this part of Colorado. As that melts, there's 1 to 3 inches of liquid in that overall, which is good given the drought situation in this part of the plains. But I want to come back to this idea of a tropical system making its way out here. And just remind you, this was the Colorado State University forecast from April. They're going to do another update. I believe it comes out in June, if I remember correctly. But they were calling for 19 named systems with an average of 14.4, above average on the unit of accumulated cyclone energy as well compared to the historical average. Well, today, just kind of thinking about what the meteorological community was discussing and looking at, the UKMET office also released their North Atlantic tropical season forecast. And very similar to CSU. Let's just look at some of the numbers here. They're saying June and November, 18 named systems, with the average being 14. And they are looking at 9 of them becoming hurricanes, which is the average would be 7. So this is 2 different forecasting groups kind of looking at very similar metrics and assessing the early season risk. So much of what they are looking at, of course, is based upon La Niña. And our La Niña, the signature of it, the symptom of it is still very much here. It's the colder water that you see in this area. And as I've been covering in every video now for the last several months, we do have the colder water off the Baja and the colder water in the Gulf of Alaska. What's important to know is, maybe just for perspective, is the difference from a year ago. Just is keep that in the back of our minds. This is this year in late May, and this was a year ago. So if you notice, look at the difference in the strength of the La Niña this year compared to last year. But all we held on to was the colder water off the Baja. And that wasn't a strong enough signal to prevent early June ridging along the western part of the United States. That's where the biggest ridge was. It was all this warmer water moving toward that area that helped just sensibly warm the atmosphere and help keep that ridge in place, just generally speaking, from British Columbia into the Pacific Northwest. So just something to keep in mind about the differences between this year and last year. From there, I would like to also show you this. Now, this is this year, May 1st through May 20th. And we have had at times a very strong and extended Pacific jet stream. You can see the influence of it there when looking at these jet stream level winds compared to normal. So big ridge of high pressure sat here. So you can see the anomalous flow coming around it like that. But to the south of it at times, and especially over on this side of the of the Pacific, we've had very strong winds. They've come in and sent a storm track, something like that. Okay, and that's what's really, throughout the month of May, kept the Northwest cold, kept the northern plains very wet, and also ignited quite a bit of severe weather to the south of this. That's it. That's the pattern that got us there. Now, just in contrast, this is a year ago. Where's all that momentum in the Pacific? It wasn't there. It was actually in the Atlantic a year ago. So see, we're looking at two entirely different scenarios, even though, technically speaking, both were springs when we had a La Niña signal, but different responses in the Pacific Ocean. And that's my main focus. I want to know what's happening in the Pacific because this year, that's where all the action is. So just thinking about that, let's go here. Now, we noticed that back in March and April, most of that time period, March through almost the end of April, we saw high momentum in the Pacific jet, and we saw, this is almost a backwards wind, a wind out of the east between 0 and 30 north. That just told me how strong the subtropical high was. As of late in May, do you see this right in through here, right on the equator? This would be a stronger westerly component of the wind over the equator. Now, it's hard to get that if your La Niña is strengthening. And our La Niña is not strengthening. It plateaued, and it is backing off of that plateau. What we need to be watching for is if we get an increase in momentum again in this particular area. That's what I'm going to be keeping a very close eye on. I'm going to make a case for that. So despite seeing the La Niña in the ocean temperatures and knowing that the Southern Oscillation Index is still minus 18, okay, that is off its peak. And as we look out there moving forward, it seems as though the MJO is now taking over as the more dominant teleconnection. And the MJO has really been moving. It swept out of the Indian Ocean and in 10 days wrapped all the way around north of Australia into the West Pacific, crashed back into null space, which is here, and is going to reemerge. Now, these very quickly moving MJO events are related to tropical disturbances everywhere. Indian Ocean, Pacific Ocean, Atlantic Ocean. They migrate across kind of the global equatorial ocean. Now, what I want to show you is the net effect of getting the MJO out in such high amplitude. I think it's the amplitude in the MJO that's most critical. And it boils down to basically looking at this. If the MJO does emerge in phase 6 in late May, just notice the troughing here and the troughing there. You see, that is a setup to give us a strong Pacific jet. And now you're going, well, what's going on across the central United States? I don't think that that's nearly as important as to what we see coming across the open Pacific. Because from phase 6 into phase 7 in May, again, deeper troughs. Yeah, they may build up into ridges at times, but this is going to carry a lot of momentum through that ridge into this area. And even into phase 8, once again, what do we see? The deeper troughs. See them coming in through here? So what this points me to looking for is an extended and strong Pacific jet, because when you look at just the mean velocities, what we call the velocity potential in the atmosphere, that's where the air is going up and down. To see inside of 10 days the MJO signal just race across 2/3 of the planet, and then here's the subsequent sinking motion, tells me that it is now the dominant mode in the tropics. In fact, you can even see, if I just scroll down here and show you, that we've lost our strong trade wind signal overall. Now, this doesn't mean La Niña is going away. It's still in the base background state of the atmosphere. We're just seeing the influence of some new activity in the MJO. Very difficult to predict that beyond a couple of weeks, so we're responding to some of these changes. And here's the biggest change I think it's going to give us. When the MJO pops out in high amplitude, okay, it doesn't matter where it is, I don't think it matters if it's in the Indian Ocean or the Pacific. It's in through here. We end up getting a response with an extended and stronger jet. What I think about when I see high amplitude MJO is more convection storms somewhere on the equator between Africa and the central Pacific. And that is just creating a greater, almost like exhaust effect in the upper atmosphere, extending the jet. Now, what's important about an extended jet as we go out to the beginning of June is that extended jets can't split here. All right. Remember last year how we talked all the time about the jet splitting? And as it splits, it avoids the west. Heat builds in there, massive drought builds in there. Not this year. It's not splitting through early June. And that means as it comes across, we're going to have to pay attention to where the mean trough is and where the subsequent downstream ridge is. That's the big story. Over the next 15 days, this is what it delivers. Now, you saw already the moisture being transported in this direction. So we saw that from the first tropical system. That's what's going on here. But when you look, there's a system coming out right now here. We're going to have systems entering late this week into the northwest, 2 of them. They're going to come through here. So the Canadian Prairie, the Northern Plains, and look at that. Now, in some places, this is troublesome for what crop we still need to plant. But to see moisture returning into this area is mission critical to drought relief that's in this particular spot. I'll show you that again in a few seconds. That's what this near-term jet stream pattern's doing, and it's resolved, I think, pretty well in the models. What is interesting is that if we get past June 7th, and let's just now look at the time period that gets us out there toward the end of June, I see this in the models. I just took you almost to the last week of June. I'm curious when the summer pattern becomes established. And what I noticed, we just kind of follow this, is we still expect to see fast winds in through here. Notice how the model is not advertising any sort of a split. Do you see that? It's just coming in. In fact, it's got troughs here. And if I had to put the ridge axis somewhere, I'd put it right there. Now that's that ridge axis on the front range of the Rockies. So the flow comes in and runs over the top of this. This could put high pressure in place here, and then it dips down there, which means you're going to see the wettest conditions there. Sorry, my drawing's a little off, but that's what I'm looking for. So I'm going to come back to a United States view, flip this over to precipitation, and say, show me, I don't know, out to the 4th of July. And now do you see it? That is what the models are painting as the most active corridor for precipitation. They're going to build heat here, and they possibly have the redevelopment of some drought. It could start from Texas and throughout June and July build back toward the northwest. But I got big questions about this, because if that jet stream continues to dip around those Gulf of Alaska troughs right in through here, then this area can't go over warm, which means even though you see a drier signal, I don't see extremely high evaporation rates pushing us fast into drought situation. You know what I'm saying there? That's what I'm watching out for. Okay, so that's the new ECMWF weeklies, July the 4th to July the 5th. Or, I'm sorry, excuse me, June the 4th through July the 4th, all right? Now, this image, I just want to put this back in your mind. Can you please be watching with me the development or the maintenance or the permanence of troughing here and a ridge there? May has given us this look so far. And I want to know, going into June, and I want you to watch this with me, if this is maintained. We see evidence of it maintaining itself in the near term. Is it still there by the end of the month? And because if it is there by the end of June, that's the month I'm talking about, then I'm getting concerned about the development of ridging in the midsection of the United States. Now this pattern got us here. Okay, this is April 1 through May 22 looking at precipitation ranks. Now you can see it. The jet stream splits the wet conditions in the northwest into the northern plains. It's expanded the drought area that's been here from the southern plains, parts of the southern plains, back to the desert southwest. And while we've had some planting windows open up in the Midwest, and we've been a little bit drier than normal here until now, until the big system just went through there, this overall pattern has been dominated by that Pacific jet stream setup I just showed you. Now what it's done is it's taken us from our peak in drought, which was really at the beginning of February, where we had about 75% of the land area in the lower 48 in some form of drought, and it's concentrated the drought in a few areas here and partly here from Oregon to parts of Montana. It's really beat it back in a lot of other locations, and we're currently sitting at about 63% of the lower 48 in some form of drought. So let's just keep that drought reference in the back of our minds. Because as we go forward, I told you this is why I'm not worried about the drought that was in this area. It's getting pushed. And we're trying, the models are really trying to return some of this heavy rain back farther into the plains. But now you start to see it coming together. Tropical impulse here. First system comes out like this. 2 more come through. And they're all going to drag in and pull in that moisture out of the Gulf of Mexico. So when I look at this, I want to know the probability of getting some heavy rain. So just an update for those who get my morning reports. Here's the 12Z runs. This is now showing the probability over the next 10 days of an inch of rain. Let's step that up to 2 inches of rain. This is the probability of 2 inches. So look at Kansas, parts of Nebraska, Iowa, very heavy rainfall in through here, starting in Oklahoma. And again, this is going on right now. And then this is the probability of 4 inches. So some very heavy rainfall possible. Now this afternoon and on Monday afternoon, we were watching where those big storms were. We see some storms popping here, and also the storms, the severe ones associated with the kind of the southeast edge of that system that was once a tropical system that's moving through this region. This is where the Storm Prediction Center was keeping a close eye tonight on Monday night. And as we go forward, here's the wave I'm watching tomorrow. There's actually 2 pieces to it. And they're coming around the broader trough here, and they're going to start to really just eject into the plains. So that's why tomorrow the severe weather risk is back into Texas toward the Red River Valley of the south. And then as we go forward, we're going to open that up here all the way up, maybe possibly toward Indiana. Let's go take a look at it by going to the high-res NAM model. There it is. Okay, 5 o'clock tonight, let's just play this forward. We can see the scattered convection here. There's that wave right in through there. That one's going to open up, bring in some pretty heavy rainfall. Look at how slowly that one's moving right there. That's overnight tonight, getting into Tuesday morning. So the severe weather will be to the south of it on Tuesday, and then we're going to watch that low curl through Nebraska, Iowa, Minnesota. We don't need another drop of rainfall here in Minnesota, yet we're getting it. And then we're going to see this by Wednesday afternoon and evening, really opening up this corridor here in the lower Mississippi River Valley and eventually here into the Ohio River Valley with the potential for severe storms as heavier rain just slides through the western Great Lakes. Now, from that point forward, let's flip over into our multi-model analysis. Just want to show you the comparison between the European in blue and the GFS in red, going back to late February. Overall, the European's been the better performer. There's been a few times where both fell out. Lately, the GFS really took a nosedive, but I think the newest updates, they're going to come right back up to being closer to behaving the same way. And I can base that on the height analysis plus their initialization, and I see some good agreement here. So GFS left, European right, and as we play this forward, we've already seen the emergence of that storm system. It's in both models, and we know that's going right to Lake Superior. So there it is, and this is what brings the wetter weather here into the central and eastern Corn Belt, down into the central Cotton Belt throughout the day on Wednesday, getting into Thursday morning. Now let's let the models pick up here from Thursday afternoon and evening, going through to Friday morning. So as one low begins to exit, watch the activity increase here in the Pacific Northwest on Friday. So there's a trough that comes in there. Here's the second one. It's in both models. It comes in. And what does it do? It increases rainfall in the northern plains Saturday. Sends more precip out of the northwest into the Canadian Prairie. And that's going to be there on Sunday into Monday. And both models do develop a deeper trough about a week from now that ejects here in the plains, increasing the rainfall threat in this area again. So that's really the setup. We saw the first big system come out, and then we're going to watch the Pacific Northwest after that. So the next 7 days from the European model, remember when you look at my color bars, this color range in here is 2 inches. So you can see very wet weather. And compare that to the GFS, same time period. So European, GFS, both models picking up really overall in the same pattern. Where does that pattern end up by the beginning of June? Well, this is June 2nd. Trough, 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 trough. That's an open pattern. We're going to keep sweeping these through, and you know what that means. That's why I was so keen on just analyzing the position of those troughs there. Because if I see them persisting into June, sure, you'll get big warm-ups out ahead of them, but they'll sweep through, cooling things off, and they'll also bring in the chance for more rain. And that's why the week 2 forecast opens up this corridor once again for wetter conditions. Also, take note of how the models are continuing to put a lot of activity into the Caribbean. I think a lot of that is associated with the movement of the MJO and, and just the time of year. It's that time of year we're going to watch the the Gulf of Mexico very carefully. All right, GFS, just for a point here, does very much agree with the European. There's the European and the GFS. Let's talk temperatures and wrap this one up. We did have a pretty substantial frost event over the weekend. This is May 20th through May 22nd, and you can see here in gray all regions where the RTMA data set recorded a temperature at or below freezing. So a lot of the western plains, northern plains, Canadian Prairie got hit with a frost. Over the next 7 days, this was mostly this morning, but we're watching again for some patchy frost tonight into tomorrow morning here. And you can see that where they've already issued the frost watches. So frost red flag, heat advisory in Central Valley of California, and this is all flood. So let's go ahead and take a look at this going forward with temperatures. First, how about the minimum temperatures? This was this morning. This is on Tuesday morning. So notice we got a lot of 30s in through here. That's where we're going to be on the lookout for another frost. Going from there into Wednesday morning, again, this area is going to be watched very carefully. But take a look at where the temperatures go after that on high temperature side. Here's today's highs, very cold compared to average here, off by about 20 degrees. Into Tuesday, same thing, as California goes into triple digits by Wednesday. Now, this cooler air in the central part of the United States begins to move late in the week. There's Thursday, getting into Friday and Saturday. And you know why? All the action returned to the northwest. That's where the troughs are coming in. So we open this back up to a lot of warmth. My concern is any moisture that comes in here, we then hit it with 90-degree weather. How quickly does it dry out? That's what I'll be worried about in that area, because we're going to keep an eye on this part of Texas and Oklahoma going through the end of the month into early June for risk of excessive heat. So that gets y'all out to next Sunday. Let's finish this up now by looking at the longer range forecast. Day 5 through 10 gets us out to June 2nd. As we just play this forward, you're going to watch the cooler weather just move east. That's what an open pattern with an extended jet does. So at least up through early June, we do not see long durations sustained above average temperatures, which we would be concerned about happening going on here. What we're going to watch after that time period is right here. That's the region to watch. And here's the reason why. If we just come back and take a look at the outlook for June the 4th through July the 4th, that is the region the models continue to put the potential for the greatest heat stress. Cooler northwest. Why? Troughs. Active storm track here. So it's going to be hard to bring the model temperatures way up above average during that time period. Let's watch this and its very close relationship with the troughs that are happening in the Gulf of Alaska. That's what I got for you today. Hope you all have a good rest of your week. Talk to you on Thursday. Thank you.